There is much interpretation that can be drawn from the magnificence of Virgo, the celestial mother of the gods. She holds firm as the virginal Da, giving way to emanations as the high priestess in her sacred chambers of the Cavum Septem Placidium. She gives birth to the child as revealed in the heavens. The four Sephira suggest that this would be the dividing screen of God. These thin, translucent vertical membranes in the midline of the brain separate the anterior horns of the right and left lateral ventricles. This sacred space, also known as the vacuus terreo, that void and empty primordial space that was so produced between the two sides, came thus into being by the retraction of the thoughtful side onto its own creation, in order to erect the manifestation of its thoughts. The retracted side became as a light. It is said that thrice did they primarily rebel, in such a way that a wound-like hole was caused upon the tree of creation during its process of germination. Then the light of this mansion descends out of the holy place and illuminates all worlds. All light coming down from on high is like the seed of man that unites the male and female, and it is so with the mansion which unites the higher with the lower sphere. The seventh mansion, being the highest and most mysterious of all, enshrouded with a veil which separates it from all other spheres and mansions, with the two cherubim standing behind it, and therefore it is termed the Holy of Holies. Therein is the Supreme Spirit that imparts life and light to all creatures, where the union of all spirits with the divine takes place. When the Holy One created man, he invested him a form so transcendently glorious and perfect in its proportions, and with mental endowment so great that all other creatures trembled and stood in awe at his presence amongst them. For on his visage he bore the imprint or the reflection of the divine creator. When we see the anatomy of the brain being aligned with the Kabbalah, which is an esoteric lore delineating the creation of the universe and the human soul, it describes how man can develop through different levels. It is an additional cosmology which describes the universe and its construction. Here it aligns to the high priestess as the middle pillar, functioning also as the circle of Willis. An alignment with the Kabbalah and the circle of Willis, which is primarily two artery sources, anastomizes to form this circle of Willis at the base of the brain, at the optic chiasm. So the internal carotid artery divides to form the middle cerebral artery and the anterior cerebral artery. The interhemispheric fissure runs between the two hemispheres. It is also called the medial longitude fissure. The 10 Sephira are placed on 3 pillars, which are called the pillar of severity, the pillar of mildness, and the pillar of mercy. The pillar of severity is on the left side of the tree of life and consists of the Sephira, Bina, Jibera, and Hod. The pillar of severity is black and is associated with the analytical and disintegrating principles of the universe. The pillar of mercy is on the right side of the tree of life and consists of the Sephira, Shokma, Chesed, and Netzah. The pillar of mercy is white and is associated with the connective and associative principles. The left side repels while the right side attracts. They are balanced by each other and one would fall apart by its own force without the other. The pillar of mildness rises between in goal and is also called the middle pillar. It consists of the Sephirah, Malkuth, Ishad, Tifrach, and Keter. The three pillars are associated with three different spiritual paths. The left path is associated with intellect and analytical path to enlightenment. The right path is associated with the artistic, poetic, and associative path to enlightenment. It is sometimes referred to as the Orphic path. The middle pillar is associated with the spiritual warrior who balances the extremes of the other two pillars to attain the highest level. This path is viewed as the most difficult and is called the royal path. The tree of life consists of 4 worlds that in turn consists of 3 triads and the Sephirah Malkuth, which stands alone. The 4 worlds constitute a form of horizontally hierarchical place blocks on the tree of life, which consists of the 3 pillars that in turn consist of vertically arranged blocks placed next to each other, of which the middle pillar reaches the highest. The tree of life was shaped by analytical forces of the left side, but gained life force from the right side. There is also a connection with the first 3 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which are called mothers. Kether corresponds to the first spark, or the first idea. Kether is the first being that has individual existence, since Kether initially is a sole existence that is defined by the dot in the circle that lacks attributes. Kether merely is, but is unable to define its existence. Thus, Kether is a non-being until the other Sephirah can define Kether's existence. Kether is the first step on the process from infinite existence to finite existence, from the divine realm to the material realm. Kether exists but lacks form. Kether merely formulates I. Kether is also associated with the primordial spark of the universe and occasionally with the planet Pluto, thereby representing the utmost level next to infinity. Chokmah is the first positive existence that can define itself in relation to something else. It is associated with the Father and male primordial force. Chokmah corresponds to the dynamic and active principle and formula I am. Chokmah is associated with the zodiacs and the planet Uranus. Bina is the understanding, organizing, and reflecting principle. It is the form-giving structure that cultivates the force from Chokmah. The primordial feminine force and the mother are associated with Bina. This Sephirah is the shaping and passive principle. A conscious existence inside Kether arises in Bina, formulating I am who I am. It is Bina that is the mother of the 7 lower Sephirah under the triad. Bina corresponds to Saturn and Neptune. The 3 highest Sephirah belong to the divine realm, or the Azazel. After the mystical fall, an abyss cracks open in the universe, and the divine level is associated from the worlds below. In the abyss, we can find Da, which is so called the non-Sephirah, since it lost its rule as a Sephirah. After the fall, Da denotes knowledge and can act as a bridge over the abyss. Shested represents the forgiving, merciful force that links together. Shested protects and preserves, but similar to all Sephirah, Shesed must be balanced by its counterpart to avoid the collapse of the tree of life. If she said were to dominate, all would melt together into an undifferentiated lump without identity. She said is associated with Jupiter. Jebera or Din corresponds to the principle of law, separation, and severity. This is the disintegrating principle that creates distance and space to enable individual existence. According to the Kabbalists, Satan and the dark forces have their origins in this Sephirah, since they represent the principles that broke free from the original unity. If this Sephirah is unbalanced, it can cause everything to disintegrate into incoherent particles. Jebera is associated with Mars. Tifereth is the center of the tree of life and balances Chesed with Jebera and provides equilibrium to the other Sephirah. Tifereth also corresponds to the sun, and its life force gives nourishment and energy to all Sephirah below. Tiferah represents the heart and is the center of the energies that circulate the tree of life. Tiferah is the mediator between that which is above and that which is below. Between the mental level and the lower Sephirah, a lesser abyss or veil exists, keeping them separate. This veil is known as the Paraketh. Netzach represents the first level of the astral plane, or of the worlds of dreams. The idea that was awakened to life on the higher spheres here appears as a vivid image or fantasy. This image gives rise to passions and desires that are energized by life force from the higher levels. Netzach is associated with Venus. Hod turns the desires and the force that radiate from Netzach into something concrete. Hod is associated with intelligence and communication. Hod is associated with mercy. Yesod is the Sephirah that is closest to the material plane. This is the Sephirah of dreams and fantasies, and it accumulates the force from the other Sephirah and transmit these to the material plane. Yesod is associated with the astral energies and sexuality. Yesod corresponds to the moon and is the last and lowest triangle, belongs to the astral plane, which is called Yetzirah. Malkuth is the world of man and the material plane, in which man is imprisoned before he begins the spiritual journey to the higher worlds. Malkuth is constructed from the four elements earth, fire, air, and water, which are physical reflections of cosmic primordial principles that can be found on other planes. In Kabbalah, the material level is called Asea. Malkuth is considered to represent aspects of the fall. The fall represents mankind's and nature's fall into matter or materialism. It is said the fall shields us from the spiritual world, and an abyss opens between man and the divine. The adept's goal becomes again to bring man into contact with the divine. And blessed be he whom found it necessary to create all these things in the world to ensure its permanence, so that there should be, as it were, a brain with many membranes encircling it. The whole world is constructed on this principle. Upper and lower, from the first mystic point up to the furthest removed of all the stages, they are all coverings, one to another, brain within a brain, and spirit within spirit, so that one is a shell to another.